Hello, wonderful people. I'm Sam, and as the sun rises over our entrance, welcome back to Hvalsø Prehistoric Wildlife Park. As we go in, you can see I've added a bit more detail. Notice these colors here. If we go in here, you can see I've made some signs. This one, the yellow sign, indicates an area, the oldest ages, which will be the Triassic, and because we have so few Triassic animals in the game, also any creatures from even older times, once we get some of them in the game down the line. Because I've built quite enough guest buildings, at least for a while, so it's time to get back to making something for the animals. Today we are going to be building for the Plateosaurus. Here they are in the game. What absolutely gorgeous creatures. I really like their skin patterns. This is Plateosaurus Gracilis, one of two species of Plateosaurus currently in the game. The other one, Plateosaurus trossingensis, is quite a bit larger, but this is the one we started out with, and frankly the one I like better. Now, before putting in the Plateosaurus, they need a place to live, so right past the Coelophysis aviary here, we come to this little sign that says under construction, because this is where we're gonna build today. Let's open the gate, and here is where we are gonna build our lovely Plateosaurus enclosure. Let's get to it. And we're off. First things first, we need to do a little bit of terrain work. Originally my plan was to have the entrance to the park on a hill, sort of overlooking the rest of the park. And I still want that, but I didn't actually make a hill before making the entrance. So now what I have to do is gradually, as I expand the park, lower the terrain of everything else. So that's what I'm beginning to do here. And then I'm putting in some path and making this little moat. The main inspiration for this habitat is various camel habitats I looked at. Because for some reason the Plateosaurus reminds me of a camel. I'm not entirely sure why. I think it's probably just the shape of the neck, or maybe that the game depicts them as desert-dwelling animals. Regardless, they do, and most of the camel habitats I looked at, they had these little moats. So I put that in, yeah. And then some path and some fencing around. All this fencing is completely temporary. It's just to give me an idea of the outline of the habitat, essentially. Which is very neat when you're building, sort of, so you know where you put in the terrain, the buildings, everything else. And then I put in this little Plateosaurus figure that I scaled down a little to match the smaller Plateosaurus species. And this, the floor of what's going to be the stable building, all this is just to get a sense of scale, essentially. I have a little bit more terrain work to do before I start working on the stable proper. Which you see me do here. Fixing it up a little more. I want a little bit of terrain difference throughout the habitat, some gentle slopes, just to make the habitat feel more alive and natural, but no big sort of cliffs or hills that just doesn't fit. That didn't really fit my vision, and also that's not something you really get in Denmark. So yeah, all very smooth, with this little outcropping in the front that I imagine they can sort of bask on if they want. Yeah. So I paint the whole habitat clay just to make it easier to see where it is, and then that little bit of grass here creeping in the corners, because I imagine it would. It's a bit of an interesting thing with grass. Plateosaurus evolved millions of years before grass did, and they probably wouldn't be able to digest it. So if you're looking at like large herbivore habitats today, they're almost always completely bare because the herbivores A, eat, and B, trample all the grass. But these animals aren't particularly big. Well, they're big, but they're not very big. And if they wouldn't eat the grass, maybe the habitat would be covered in it. On the other hand, since grass is not a part of the Plateosaurus natural habitat, I imagine maybe the keepers keep it out somehow with hopefully not pesticides, but I don't know. What I end up with here is sort of a mix. I have some paleo plants and a lot of bare dirt, but also some grass poking throughout the habitat. But here I am building the stable building itself. I wanted it to be pretty spacious, as you can see, because while this is the milder end of Scandinavia, it's still Scandinavia, and it gets pretty cold in the winter in Denmark. And these animals, they lived at a time where the world was somewhere between 10 and 30 degrees warmer than it is today. That's how it was in the Triassic, and so I imagine they would need lots of indoor space in the winter. at least the opportunity to go indoors and be comfortable in there in the winter to keep warm. Yeah. The building itself, the stable, is inspired by the camel stable in Copenhagen, which is this big sort of black painted log cabin with a thick thatch roof, which I unfortunately can only find a very grainy Google Maps picture of, but there it is. And then, because now I have this big open space in this stable that is much larger than the stable it's based on, I'm putting in these little pens, so each Plateosaurus gets a pen. Actually, there's 6 pens in total, so there's gonna be one extra, which you'll see about in a bit. But yeah, that was basically just to so the stable didn't just feel like a big empty room. But I think it turns out very nice. And then I put in some bedding in each pen to make it comfortable, and nests in the 4 of them that are supposed to be for the females. And then before I get to anything else, I get interrupted, which you'll see about in a second. I paused the building here because I got a notification that said Helia here, my albino Silophysis, has mated. So I just wanted to see it here. Yeah, it's preparing the nest for her offspring. It's gonna be very exciting. Which of course also means they've all grown up. Look at them. They've lost their baby downs and they look sleek, equal parts cute and menacing as they're supposed to. Very nice. Back to building. So I continue working on the stable. I decide to make it a lot taller so I can fit in some gates for the pens that open upwards. But before I get to making those, I need to make a gate for the stable itself, which is again inspired by how the stable looks in Copenhagen Zoo. It has this lovely sort of wood carved gate with sort of little implied roofs on it. It has 2 narrow gates besides each other, and I rather wanted one big one, partially because that's going to be easier with the Dinosaurs hitbox in the game, and partially because with the stable being a lot bigger than the source material, it also felt better to have a bigger gate here, which needs all this little lovely trim and detail, I felt, to make it look good, which admittedly took a little while. I wish I could have just used the curved pieces that I originally tried to use, but I end up taking very short straight pieces and curve them around manually. But yeah, luckily I could just like make one half and then, because it's symmetrically, copy it over to the other side in the end, which you'll see me do here in a second. Yeah, here we go. I also make these big sort of barn doors for it, which I forgot to record the making of, but you'll see them a bit later. And then I make this little sign for the front, partly to just cover up that thing where the gate meets in the middle, and partly because I figured there probably should be a sign here anyway, and I can model it after the signs I used in the Silophysis aviary. So I just, do that, put in a little Plateosaurus, and then this absolutely horrible pun that I hope you can forgive me for. And then it's on to the inside again. These lovely girder pieces, I can't get enough of them. They're so great for making gates and so on, because they give the appearance of a place where a gate can slide into. And so you can see I'm raising the roof to make space for those. And before I get to making the gate itself, I'm interrupted again by some lovely news in the park. So you'll have to wait a little bit while we go back to look at the Silophysis. And our first clutch of Silophysis babies have hatched. There's 2 melalistic ones among them, although the mother is albino, funnily enough. My, there's a lot of them. They come in big clutches. I think, unfortunately, we're going to have to sell some of them off, or this habitat is going to get overcrowded very quickly. Which, to be fair, I was warned about, but still. Oh, but they're so adorable. They definitely gotta keep a couple of them, at least one of the melanistic ones. Anyway, back to building. Alright, where were we? Yes, the gate. So originally I wanted to just have a plate, but that didn't look right, so I reused the bars from the pens, and then I put that little yellow bar on the bottom that gates like this always have. They also have them in the prefab buildings the game provides. I think that's like a safety measure, like hey, careful, this thing can come down. And then I close one of the gates because that's the one that's not going to be in use, at least as of yet. I make a ceiling, but then I turn the entire ceiling to glass temporarily so I can see what I'm doing underneath it as I'm placing the lights. Among the lights are these, yeah, here they are, heat lamps. I'm putting them over each pen to imply that, well, there are heat lamps over each pen. Because I imagine, again, with the cold Scandinavian winters and these creatures being from a much warmer time, it would be nice for them to have that in their pens, even though they aren't reptiles per se, you know. And then in the closed pen, I'm just putting in a little bit of decoration, like the keepers are maybe doing maintenance or something. Perhaps this pen will come in use once these animals grow up and have some babies of their own. But for now, I just, yeah, use some thatch pieces to make a hay bale there. And then it's on to decorating. This is the last of making the stable. So the decorations here, I'm making some trim for the windows. I get more and more into making these sorts of details as I go on building. In the beginning I probably would have just put in a glass pane and called it that. Now I'm making double trim to make it look more realistic, but I don't know. I like how it ends up looking. Yeah, and though there are those gates I talked about, and I give them these big heavy door handles with these heavy metal rings to pull on. Since recording this, I've actually updated them a little bit more, the gates, so they look a bit more detailed. But all in all, I think they look very nice as they are. Yeah. And then on the inside, there was a little bit of space left on each side of the pens, so I put in this little staff maintenance area with the water hoses and some buckets. So now there's gonna be like a point for a water hose on each corner of the stable, so I imagine it's easier for the keepers to wash the whole stable down when they need to, which is also why I put in these drains here. And then backstage props, just the usual shelves and the sink and some tables, and then some various boxes to put on the shelves. Simple as ever, just to give the implication that the place is in use. Maybe someday in the future I'll make a habitat with like a full-on backstage where I really go nuts on the details, but for now the backstage prop as they are in the game, they do a wonderful job. And the backstage, of course, it needs lights as well, so same trick as with the rest of the stable. Here we are. I always struggle to figure out exactly how much light I need, but I think this ends up pretty nice. And then the roof. The roof of the actual stable has a little sort of curve over the gates that I wanted to recreate a little bit. Didn't get it exactly right, but it still looks pretty nice. And then the rest of it here, just, yeah, up towards the top, big thatch roof. And then it has this little sort of thing, a little hat on top that I also wanted to recreate. Just gives the whole building a little bit more character, a little bit more texture. But on the backstage, I figure as the thatch is probably more like a scenic thing for the guests. So back here it's just like a regular old roof. They probably wouldn't bother with the thatch back here. I also, since recording this, I've made the backstage a little smaller actually. And then there's this mode. Oh, I struggled with this mode. I wanted to make a concrete mode, I really did. It just made more sense, you know, this mode is obviously man-made, and it made much more sense to have like a concrete one than a rock one, even if we imagine these are faux rocks. But I just couldn't get that to look right, and it's so much easier to do things with rocks. They cover a lot of holidays, as we say in Danish. But I do a little bit of regular rock work as well, as you can see here, and then onto some terrain painting. Just sparsely sort of pockets of grass in between the sand and dirt, and then I make these little, I use the grassland mud like I did in the Seal of Isis enclosure to make these little paths. that I imagine are sort of the most traveled paths throughout the enclosure for the Plateosaurus. And to highlight them a bit more, I also add in some temperate substrates to make them a little darker and a little more obvious as paths than just something that is spread throughout the habitat. And this is just like me making a palette of the kind of ground cover I want in the habitat. As you see, some regular grasses and some paleobotany plants. And then once I have the palette down, I go in and select that in the foliage brush and then just spread it throughout the habitat, just ever so carefully. And then I edit it around a bit. I actually do that quite a lot. I just cut most of it out. And I absolutely fill the moat with greenery, because I imagine the Plateosaurus can't get there to eat it, and the keepers can't get there to cut it. And then some trees, just some small paleo trees here. And this big one in the middle to give them some shade here on the little outcrop that they can spend time under. And then it's onto some food and some enrichment items. Nothing major here except for adding that little water pipe to the little water trough there, so it looks like it's coming directly from the building. And then I've deleted all the temporary fences, and it's onto making the permanent fences. They don't really look any better than the fences that are already in the game, but I like making it my own, and it also means that I can prefab the whole habitat, and you will be able to find it on the workshop. I will upload it along with this video. Although, you know, since I can't prefab any of the terrain elevation, I don't know how effective it's going to be to, you know, download this and put it into your park as it is right now. These little logs, that's another thing I saw on regular camel habitats. I imagine it's to sort of gently dissuade the camels from jumping into the moat. So I put those in there. I think it looks pretty nice. And then it's onto some binoculars, some signs for education, with a little, it's gonna say, what is it I end up calling it? The beginning of something great. Because, you know, Plateosaurus are like progenitors of the sauropods. And then some bins and some benches, just the regular stuff, and a little bit of planting just to frame in the area. And then here our little for the kids mascot sign with taco I edit. I'll talk about that in a bit. Yeah. Then I've removed the entire tower. This is like, thought I was done, and then I realized that tower is just, it's overshadowing the entrance. So I'm moving it. I'm gonna put it back in the park later, somewhere more central. But instead I'm making this little lovely sort of shop stand thing with these bright yellow walls. It's inspired by another building from Knuthenborg Safari Park. I'm not entirely sure what that building was used for. It might have been an old groundskeeper's hut, although it is a little big for that. But regardless, here I am making it, and the interior, of course, I'm just sort of free-forming. Arguably with way too much detail, considering it's the interior of a staff building that no one's ever going to see. But here we are. On the exterior, I just, the outside trim here, it's just all one group that I then scale down to fit snugly around the side of the building. Very easy. And again, interior here with, like, you know, bins and benches that the staff can't actually use, but it felt nice to have it. And then perfectly normal roof tiles here. Nothing especially complicated here. Just recolor that a bit. And then the building I'm basing this off have these little sort of funky pillars on each corner, so I wanted to recreate that. I forgot to record making the first one, but here I am copying it to each of the other four corners. And some finishing trim. I have actually made a little bit more of this since recording this, but yeah, I think it's such a funky thing that they use like the exposed bricks as trim. But yeah, it's got signs now. And then I make this little gate which signals entry into this section of the park. And with that done, it's time to put in our Plateosaurus and explore this new area. Here we are in the hatchery, ready to add in our Plateosaurus. Alright, here they are, all 5 of them. Let's add them in. Ah, look at these little guys. Funky little critters. So tiny now, They're gonna grow up relatively big. This stable looks much too large for them right now. Oh, they're already running out into the morning sun to explore their new habitat. Ah, quite energetic, aren't they? Yeah. Oh, and right into the moat. Oh, I may have made a mistake here. Alright, I believe that that's what you call a swing and a miss. But with a few tweaks to the moat and the logs, I made it work. They are contained, the little rascals. Oh. And now they can actually go about exploring their habitat within bounds. I'll give you a little tour of what I made. Here we are. Now we can properly enter our oldest ages section. The first thing we come to is Claude's ice cream parlor. And Anne-Marie's knickknacks is probably the best translation. And then as we follow along the hedges down the slope, we come to this sign that says the Plateosaurus Prairie. And somewhere in here is our new little guys. Here we have one. Hello, little guy. He's probably heading in for the night. This habitat's taco challenge says Plateosaurus right on the tip of my tongue. Although there's almost as much time between Taco and the Plateosaurus as there is between Taco and you and I, he still feels there's something oddly familiar about them. And can you guess what it is? Which of course refers to the fact that these are early relatives of the sauropods, and there would have been sauropods around in Taco's time in the early Cretaceous, just not these guys. Now a quick turn back to the entrance. I've just taken us back to the supporter wall, and that's because I want to say the supporter wall is not for anyone supporting me financially. I don't have a Patreon. This is just for subscribers of my YouTube channel, if you want to have your name in the park to show support and just feel included. So you could get your name up here, or you can get your names on one of the animals I put in the park, or you can frankly do both if you want. And now let's get back to the animals. Our Plateosaurs are enjoying their new habitat. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and comment down below. And subscribe if you want to see more of what I'm doing. As he's heading back towards his stable, I think I'm gonna turn in as well. Take care of yourselves, wonderful people. Until next time.